back, and I'm sure we have audio now. What a gift. What a gift to hear the sounds of truth, which I hope we can tap into tonight with this video on the wheat and the tares. The fields are already white for harvest. When Jesus said that in the first century, was he referring to some prophecy that would be fulfilled thousands of years in the future? The fields are already white for harvest. Does that not denote that he is observing an immediately present reality and so convey imminence? Would that be an absurdity to conclude? I don't think so. And what of these wheat and tares? What are we talking about? What is being invoked? What is the field? What are we referring to? Is this covenantal language, or are we talking about something more ontological and experiential that we can all interface with today, presently, right now? And what of that unquenchable fire that's spoken of in the same breath? Is that something that awaits us? Is that something that we should be fearful of? What's going on? That's the question. And we've already resolved some of those questions. You know, we had some technical gremlins. I was wondering what was going on with the channel. We figured that out and we're back. So what I want to do now is just dive on in to this presentation. And let's get into these ideas. Let's see what we can find as we explore full preterism together. So the wheat and the tares, we're told about this in Matthew 13:24-30. The kingdom of heaven is likened unto a man which sowed good seed in his field. But while men slept, his enemy came and sowed tares among the wheat. So here we have this introduction to the field, to the wheat, to the tares. We'll get into that more as we go on, but look at this. In Matthew 13:37-43, we read, the harvest is the end of the age. Now, we must put that under a microscope, right? If the harvest is the end of the age, then, my goodness, if we can identify the time of the harvest, then we have discovered the end of the age. And that is something that should be, not swept aside, not unseen. We should recognize how significant this is. And hey, I think we do as full preterists, because see, when a futurist reads those words, when they say that end of the age, they think end of the world, okay? But that's the wrong idea, right? I mean, you read the New Testament, and in there you will see how the disciples tell the churches, upon us have come the end of the ages. It is the last hour. This kind of language, right? What incredibly hyperbolic statements, richly symbolic. What are we talking about? Well, I've kindly offered the phonetic pronunciation here, the suntelia to ionos. Probably still messed that up. It'll be a little different depending on your accent. But basically what we're saying when we express that Greek noise is the idea of consummation, the end of the age. We are not talking about the destruction of the space-time continuum, okay? We're not going there. It's not some massive sci-fi drama. It's not some space epic. We're talking about Old Covenant Israel, this covenantal language, okay? So the harvest marks the end of the covenantal world, centered on that temple worship, centered on that sacrificial system, that Levitical priesthood, okay? That is the old covenant administration, okay? If we look into the Old Testament, can we see similar language? Can we ground this idea of the harvest, of the field, of the wheat and the tares? Is this something that would be used in the past when discussing covenantal ideas? And we can see here that Israel is perceived to be Yahweh's vineyard, okay? And it should produce good fruit. But as we see throughout the Old Testament, it sometimes doesn't, okay? And it can produce these wild grapes, so to speak, okay? So it's a little off center here, but it says, that this is essentially the same symbolic structure as wheat and tares. Okay, expected covenant fruit, corrupt growth within the covenant people, impending judgment, harvest. Okay, so it's the similar ideas, the motifs that you see throughout the Old Testament. Okay, sow to yourselves in righteousness, you have plowed wickedness. Okay, we're using the same agricultural language of sowing, growth, harvest, covenant outcome. It's there. Okay, it's not some new invention. It's there. It's been present. It's part of that culture. And Jesus is invoking that to describe a period of judgment and renewal. Okay, put ye in the sickle, for the harvest is ripe. Okay, that's massively important because Revelation and Jesus both inherit this judgment harvest imagery. Okay, and that harvest, as we can see by looking at the Old Testament, just briefly here, but it is part of that covenant judgment language. We have established that there is a link there. Okay, so what is wheat? What is a tare? So wheat is a valuable grain. It is nourishing. Okay, it is fruitful. But a tare or a darnel, well, that's much more menacing. See, that's a poisonous imitation of grain, and the menace, the insidious nature of it is that it is very difficult to discern the difference between wheat and tare. Okay, it's very difficult to see the difference until the point of fruiting. Okay, it's probably a better word for that, for the point of fruition, where the fruit comes in to its cycle, its presence, it bestows itself, its glory upon us. So that's what Jesus' point is, right? It resembles the wheat until maturity. So the issue was false sons within Israel itself. You have that corrupt leadership, the hypocritical religion, the violent zealotry, the outward covenant identity without inward transformation. What does that sound like? That's a whitewashed tomb. These are the ones Jesus would describe as a brood of vipers. Okay, so that all makes sense to my ear. That seems reasonable. Okay, the tares are covenant counterfeits occupying the same field, and the field would appear to my mind to be the old covenant system. If, as you know, you could probably say it better. So, having a little gander now into the New Testament. In the first century, Israel had genuine disciples of Christ and covenant opposition growing among the hypocrites. So you had oppositional forces and you had genuine discipleship, and they would grow together, okay, through that end of age period, right? Jesus said that the separation was imminent between the two, right? Whose fan is in his hand, that winnowing fan is in his hand, right? It's not on a shelf, it's not in the work shed down the dusty trail, it's in hand. And he will gather his wheat into the garner, but he will burn up the chaff with unquenchable fire. Okay, that unquenchable fire, a really good way of saying final judgment. You want to slip back into the old covenant system? It doesn't exist. It is null. It is void. It is a burning fire, the flames of which will never be quenched because it is a existential, ontological, it's just a dead end across every level of analysis. You try and put yourself back there, there's nothing. There's nothing there. It's no longer there. It is dead. It is to put on death at this point. So this is not about the physical universe, okay? We're not burning up the physical universe, right? People get that idea from reading Peter, who is invoking a Hellenistic idea of the ekpyrosis, right? Which is a Hellenistic idea of recycling through fire, okay? But that's not what the Hebraic perspective was in terms of a, universe-ending cataclysm, We're not talking about the heat death of the universe here. We're talking about something else. A changing covenant. Okay? So that's what we're discussing. Lift up your eyes and look on the fields. Why should you lift up your eyes? Why should you look on the fields? I'll tell you why. For they're white for harvest. They're white for harvest. The fire. The fire. The fire! I don't want to hear it. So there's fire. Don't know how to make my phone go quiet, but don't mind if you're watching this, by the way, you're someone messaging me. It's fine. Don't worry about it. I don't know how my new phone works. Let's just accept it as a little chiming, a little garnish for the video. So the fire is covenant judgment imagery, okay? Not God setting the cosmos alight, okay? He's not burning up everything in creation at the end of history. Where's the sense in that, right? Just sit back and reflect and consider what it means to be human, right? This storytelling creature, this creature that has vision and hope and love and direction, and it's like, we're just going to burn it all up. Oh man, I really wish I could make that stop. Wish I could make that. I'm not bothered by it. I don't want you, the listener, to feel like I'm bothered by that, because I'm not. I'm genuinely not bothered by it. The profile says silent. I'm going to sit on it. So, Jerusalem itself became the furnace. Josephus practically describes the city in apocalyptic terms, okay? He talks of flames, blood, famine, internal corruption, bodies piled in the streets. It's actually quite morbid and really destructive and sad that took place in history. The parable becomes horrifyingly concrete in AD 70, which is very sobering. I think it's one of those things that when you read about it, you think, wow, the potential for destruction, the potential for violence in the human heart. What an incredibly potent force. If only we could take that passion and use it for good. And I believe we can. I believe we should. So let's talk about today. Let's do that. So it's important to highlight the old covenant framework has indeed passed, and lazily refusing, or rather lazily reusing every apocalyptic category as if we are still awaiting the same covenant climax would be a mistake and completely irrelevant to our spiritual development with God. That said, we still see builders and destroyers, truth bearers and counterfeiters, those awake in the spirit and those dominated by nihilism. Okay, the world still provides the adversarial forces, the constraints, the challenges, the rough textures, okay, the poisons, the toxins, the dark. We have moved from covenant judgment to covenant responsibility. The question now becomes, what kind of human being is growing in the field of the world? And are we nourishing the world or poisoning it while resembling the real thing? What carries the spirit of life forward in our age? There's a comedian called Theo Vaughn. He's based out there in Nashville, Tennessee, and he's quite silly and irreverent. He won't be for every Christian's liking, but I've got a high tolerance for comedy. I love the art. I think humor immersion is so important for the human spirit, and something that Theo Vaughn does really well is contend with the difficult stuff of life, his issues with addiction and his growing faith. And he shared a prayer, and it was just so nice because he said, the prayer that I like to pray sometimes is, while I'm sitting there with my eyes closed praying, I'll say to God, as I'm praying to you now, Holy Father, I can sense that I'm insincere. I can sense, God, that I'm praying to you, and part of that's performative, part of that's fake. I'm just doing this, but I know in my heart I'm going to betray the things that I'm saying to you. Please, Heavenly Father, can you forgive that part of me? Wow. I thought, what an incredible thing for a cultural intermediary to say. What an incredible thing for an influencer to voice, right? What authenticity, what genuineness of heart. And that's why I've got such a passion for the artist, to come forward and to influence like that. There was a Scottish Republican who once said, I don't care who writes the laws of a country, only who writes the songs, or I would rather write the songs of a country than write the laws. Why? Because a good song's worth 10,000 votes, right? Whereas, a law, you can try and wrangle things, or a policy, wrangle things, but you write a good song, you can influence the policy. You can change the minds and the hearts. That's why people fight for the narrative, right? The info war, right? That's what it's all about. It's an information war. It's a fight for narrative control, right? And you have the big religious institutions who will tell you, God thinks this. Let's do it this way because God said so. And then you might have a secular institution that says, no, there's no God, but we should do it this way because this is what certain ethics derived from nature inform us to do. And this is just a good utilitarian argument. Let's follow that. And genuinely, you can get yourself all wrapped up in factionalism very easily. I think the way to avoid it is through a certain disposition of heart, right? That agape love, okay, that unconditional love, which we should seek to extend to so many. There's some poetry here. I want to turn my attention to what people are writing. If you're writing any comments, feel free. Let's engage with each other a little bit tonight. If you have any questions, they don't even have to be about this video, but if you have some, by all means, feel free to share them. John O'Donoghue, he was someone I was introduced to tonight, but also I have a friend who is really into John O'Donoghue. And there's a poem called To Bless the Space Between Us. And it says this, it says, may you have the wisdom to enter generously into your own unease, to discover the new direction your longing wants you to take. And the reason that resonates with me, if you didn't hear it, try and feel it. That is such a good message for someone who is entertaining full preterism, okay? May you have the wisdom to enter generously into your own unease. It was something that I tried to capture in the tail end of this book here, okay? I'm not going to try and sell you. If you want it, you can get it right on Amazon. But on the tail end of it, I tried to explain to the reader that, hey, look, I understand that this is not easy, right? It's like pouring yourself a hot bath and getting down past your waistline like, ooh, boy, ooh, baby. Yeah, I mean, it's like, oh, this is a little uncomfortable. Or getting into the sea, maybe you're on holiday and you're going to the sea, it's a little cold. You're like, ooh, okay, you know what I mean? You gotta psych yourself in it. It's not comfortable. You know what I mean? And sometimes that transition, it can alienate. You can accidentally become an enemy of those you love, right? You didn't intend for it. They just perceive this change in you. What's that? You believe some information slightly differently? Well, I always knew you were a black sheep of the family. It's like, what are you talking about? It's like, I'll just believe something slightly differently and you're going to ostracize me? Is that what we're doing? But yeah, that is what we're doing. That's human history. That's what we've always done. It's not surprising, but it's so basic. And we're asked not to be so basic. You know, we're asked to do more. You know, I'm seeing people like there's a skeptic on YouTube called Alex O'Connor. I don't know if he's Armored Skeptic or one of these Cosmic Skeptic or something like that. It's like a synonym that he goes by. It's a synonym. It's not a synonym, a pseudonym. I don't know. But he goes by different things. The point is, he made a video recently on how consciousness might be fundamental, okay? And that introduces spirituality in an empirical language, or a philosophically rationalistic way, which can appeal to the empiricist, to the scientist, to the positivist, right? But it's meeting us halfway. And as, kind of religious people, but hopefully trying to transcend the rigidity of dogmatic religion, not that there's no place for ritual and all the, pageantry of religion, but it can sometimes become constraining and inflexible and dumb towards the deaf towards relating to God, right? It can silence your prayer. It can narrow your vision. I think we need to meet we need to meet those who are willing to engage with transcendence halfway, okay? We cannot try to approach them like a crossroads demon and have them sell their soul. We have to meet them relationally and engage with them in a spirit of love, because ultimately God loves us all, right? We're not holding back a door like, oh my goodness, God is behind this door, and if you don't believe the right things, he's going to bust through. It's not like that, right? It's just not like that at all. It's like God is in us, in them, through and beyond everything. And we're not holding back God from judging people. We're trying to get people to relate to God in a way that brings about a beautiful harmony in the world. So that idea, may you have the wisdom to enter generously into your own unease to discover the new direction your longing wants you to take, because you long for the truth. You long for that. We all do. Okay. There's another one here from Adonahue. The human soul is hungry for beauty. We seek it everywhere. That's just the same point. We want to be nourished by the truth. T.S. Eliot and The Wasteland and The Hollow Men. He says in The Hollow Men here, he talks of shape without form, shade without colour. And that's a tear, isn't it? A shape without form and a shade without colour. He's describing a tear, something that resembles life but is hollow internally. So externally it might have a certain appearance, but internally it lacks a substance. That's something we contend with, it's something that we can be, right? And I don't mean for people to feel self-conscious about a certain imposter syndrome that we can all experience. That's normal, right? But sometimes we are just not who we think. I've had periods in my life where I thought, oh, I'm a Christian, and that means that I'm this saintly character. And then when my character's been tested, I've done something that I just felt on reflection, nah, that wasn't right. I shouldn't have done that. I shouldn't have said that. I should have taken myself to that place. I should have removed myself from that situation. So these are things that can happen. Life can expose you for the hollowness of your character, which is a good thing. It's a good thing to discover that. Don't think it's not a good thing to discover you're incomplete and imperfect and need perhaps a little guidance. There ain't nothing wrong with that. That's what life is all about. Where is the life we have lost in living? Asks Eliot. Okay, so in life, I like that. Where is the life? Capital L. Where is the life that we have lost in living? Because the living that he's talking about, that's all the noise and fury and distraction and the branding and the ideological fortresses that shoot at each other and wah. I was really impressed by the governor of Utah, Cox, and the governor of Maryland, Moore. And they got together and had this Disagree Better campaign. And I thought that's exactly what this moment calls for, because we just don't disagree like we used to anymore. We've become so polarized. And this might be wrong, right? I understand that America, the United Kingdom, whatever, we've all had civil wars. It has been worse. But what I'm saying is, it didn't, maybe it's just because we're growing up now and experiencing it a bit more entrenched than we were when we were younger and busier or distracted. Maybe it wasn't so good 20, 30, 40 years ago, but it's kind of seemed like about 20, like there was a sweet spot in the early 2000s. I might be wrong. It seemed like there's a little sweet spot in the early 2000s, and then we just dropped the ball. So I don't know. I'm not saying let's go back. I'm not thinking about going backwards. I'm thinking about progress and becoming and learning from the mistakes of the past, not to return to a golden age, but to move into a better environment for us all, and to be participants in it, better informed. William Blake offers us a warning here when he says, as the caterpillar chooses the fairest leaves to lay her eggs on, so the priest lays his curse on the fairest joys. Sinister. But that talks about the corruption of the sacred, okay? There can be sacred offices and they're just hollow. They just don't seem to have the substance, right? And some of the common parlance, give it due credence, right? Hear it out. See the idea, like I talked about vibes. If you're a bit older, you're like, vibe? What are you talking about vibe for? What's vibe? But, you know what I mean? It's like a thing that people will sometimes make reference to as the vibe. And it's like, I don't know if you've ever walked into some exceedingly stuffy, overly religious environment, and the vibe is macabre. It's some people say that macabre. The vibe is sinister and haunting, and you know what I mean? It's like someone walks over your grave or something. It just feels, I don't like that. And then you can go into other less formal spiritual environments and have a discussion with friends, and it just feels more wholesome. The light is more golden. The fire crackles lovely. You're having some nice soup and a sandwich and maybe a little something, you know, a little whiskey. No, I don't know. You know, if you're sober, don't do that. But you know what I mean? You can have a good time. I guess vibe is just seems important, right? Vibe is important. And that's where I feel like the futurists get it wrong. Because when I watch a lot of futurist debate, I think debate in general just carries a bad vibe. But when I watch a lot of futurists, sometimes the arrogance and the assumed winsomeness of their position, the assumed esteem and credibility of their position overwhelms them. It's sort of like seeing someone being corrupted by riches. You know what I mean? Like, they might be humble and you give them a couple $1 million and they just become an asshole. That's what I feel like happens with futurists in debates. It's like, oh yeah, like the good people, like fine people, you put them in a debate and they just become the biggest assholes you've ever seen in your life. It's like, all right, I mean, okay. I mean, we've all been there, right? Maybe we've all been. I haven't personally because I'm a saint. No, I'm not saying that. All right, we've got George MacDonald. He wrote, the one principle of hell is I am my own. This is the last little bit of poetry we're going to look at here. The last principle of hell is I am my own. So that's a little note on tear mindset. The mindset of the tear, okay? It's self-enclosed, against love. It's against communion, okay? It's got that hard shell that doesn't let the truth penetrate. I am my own, okay? Wheat, which is quite different, it nourishes. And that idea of I am my own is not to say that there's anything wrong with self-determination. What the criticism is, well, it reminds me of a song that I learned when I was a child in primary school. It wasn't that long ago. I'm not going to, 20 odd years ago. But I mean, when I was in primary school or elementary school, we would pray. We would still pray, right? We don't do that anymore. But we used to start in secular schools, we'd start with a prayer, we'd say the Heavenly Father, and then we'd sing hymns and little spiritual songs. And one of them was something like, love is like a magic penny. Hold it tight and you won't have any. Lend it, spend it. You will have so many, they will roll all over the floor. I used to sing that as a kid. And what a beautiful thing to have in mind, right? Love is like a magic penny. Hold it tight, you won't have any. Lend it, spend it. You'll have so many, they'll roll all over the floor. Hey, love is something if you give it away, give it away, give it away. Love is something if you give it away, you end up having more. Wow. So I'm just, your minds are melting on that one. But what I'm saying is, it's such a simple message, guys, and this is the art that the human needs this. The project of the Enlightenment made us a bunch of sterile nerds. Okay, there's nothing wrong with being nerdy, but if it makes you sterile, if it kills your passion, if it kills your idea of beauty and intuition and romance and spirituality, then it has hurt you. It's not made you wonderful. Okay, it's not good to become a Vulcan. It's not good to become you know, Data before he gets his emotions, right? I don't know why I'm going to Star Trek for this, but you know what I mean? It's not good to be the T-1000, T-800 or whatever else. You're a human being with feeling and passion and emotion. And that's good, right? That's a good thing. It's not a bad thing. It's not something to be corrected. It's what we are, right? God understands that. And he's given us a beautiful story of victory to place into our hearts, which makes us better people. But we have to download the software. We have to practice the code. And if we don't, then we end up with the hostility. Okay? So, the wheat and the tares is there today, but it was gone tomorrow. No, anyway, I think that's me said my piece. I think that's everything I wanted to say with this video. So I'll leave it up for a little bit. I'm trying to tweak the channel. I'm going to try and make playlists. You know, I'm taking some stuff down to put back up in a playlist and just going through and tweaking things. So the channel's kind of going through a little bit of maintenance right now. But no, looking forward to discussing more concepts with everyone, making some more edited videos, and hopefully having more discussions here on the channel. So thank you for joining me. You know, the little hat was a choice today. The little hat was a choice today rather than trying to comb my hair. But yeah, what can I say? Thank you everyone for your attention. God bless, and I'll speak to you all later. Take care.